Karoline Leavitt told Jasmine Crockett to go back. What Crockett said next shocked the nation. The air in Congress was thick with anticipation, but no one expected the storm that hit when Karoline Leavitt, 26-year-old conservative firebrand and self-styled heir to the mega throne, leaned into her microphone and said, eyes blazing, "Maybe you should go back where you came from." That sentence sliced through hours of scripted political theater like a bolt of electricity, stopping time in the packed hearing room and setting in motion a cultural shockwave that would ricochet across America. The line wasn't just a slip-up, it was the match that ignited one of the most explosive confrontations in modern political memory, a moment captured live, instantly dissected, and watched by millions in real time. But what happened next redefined the boundaries of political courage. Across from her, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Texas's 42-year-old civil rights attorney turned rising Democratic powerhouse, stood up. No panic, no shake, just a quiet fire in her gaze as the entire room pressed forward, spellbound. Crockett's response would not only command the floor, but transform a classic go-back slur into a thunderous reminder of what it means to truly belong in America. In just 30 seconds, she would channel the weight of history, her personal story, and constitutional law into a masterclass of dignity and defiance, one destined to be replayed, analyzed, and remembered for years. Before that iconic exchange, no one watching expected this hearing on election security to make headlines beyond the usual Beltway bickering. But the moment light tried to silence Crockett, a black woman from one of the nation's most diverse districts, the context changed entirely. Republicans hoped the young conservative witness would ride the viral wave she'd cultivated on cable news, pushing the narrative of voter fraud anxiety in urban areas. Meanwhile, progressive corners buzzed that Crockett, a tenacious advocate with a history of surviving and confronting hostility, might bring the heat. As fate would have it, the spark came not from prepared remarks, but from a raw, unscripted insult echoing America's oldest wounds. Phones started recording as soon as the words left Light's lips. Staffers and members froze. The camera zoomed in, catching every shift in Crockett's posture, every spark in her eyes. In those few charged seconds, before anyone spoke, before the Twitter outrage, before even a single hand met the gavel, viewers everywhere sensed history turning, as if the ground had shifted and the whole world was waiting to see which way it would tip. What followed would explode beyond the Capitol. Within minutes, clips of the moment, Leavitt's words, Crockett's unbreakable resolve, were racing up trending charts on TikTok, X, and Instagram. Political leaders, celebrities, and scholars would weigh in. Some decried bigotry, others marveled at composure under pressure, but buried under all the reactions was one clear truth. America hadn't just witnessed another viral takedown. It had seen what happens when someone tries to push a leader out, and instead gets handed a lesson on belonging, power, and the arc of progress. Before we get to Crockett's unforgettable clapback, take a breath and think. What would you do if someone challenged your right to the room, your identity, your dignity? Live on the highest stage with the world watching? Would you freeze, or would you seize the moment and burn a lesson into history? Because that's exactly what Jasmine Crockett did. And if you thought you'd seen political drama before, strap in. This is the confrontation no one could silence, the viral moment that forced a nation to face who really gets to speak and who refuses to back down. You could feel the tension the moment Karoline Leavitt entered the hearing room, a collision course set long before either woman took their seat. Light, just 26, was no stranger to the spotlight. Rising up the conservative ranks with a brand built on sharp elbows and sharper sound bites, she had gone from failed congressional candidate to pundit fixture almost overnight. Her energy that day radiated the practiced confidence of someone who knows every camera angle. Her appearance curated for maximum impact, perfectly styled blonde hair, a navy suit crisp as her rhetoric, and a steely smile reserved for political combat. In conservative circles, she was celebrated as proof that the new right didn't have to play nice to win. Facing her, across a semicircle of lawmakers and flickering C-SPAN lights, was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a stark study in contrast. At 42, she was already a veteran of grueling courtrooms and grassroots battles, a civil rights attorney who'd clawed her way from local activism to representing one of the country's most diverse districts. Crockett wore her experience less like armor than like a beacon, her reputation for directness and meticulous preparation more feared than her viral moments could ever capture. She exuded a quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to command the room because the room already listens. But what made this collision inevitable wasn't just personality, it was everything the two women symbolized. Leavitt, young and media-hardened, represented a new generation of conservatives, blunt, impatient with nuance, unafraid of controversy if it meant securing headlines and viral clips. She played to a base that rewarded audacity, willing to say what some only dared whisper. Crockett, meanwhile, embodied a contemporary progressive ethos, intersectional, rooted in lived experience, and fiercely protective of hard-won civic gains. Her presence on the committee was a testament to the changing face of Congress. More women, more people of color, more voices demanding a say in how history gets written. The political context made it feel like a proxy war for the soul of American politics. The hearing itself, nominally about election integrity, had already been overshadowed by unspoken stakes. Republicans wanted to stoke fears of fraud in urban centers, coded language all too familiar to anyone versed in the country's troubled racial past. Democrats aimed to expose those tactics and defend the legitimacy of every voter, especially those from marginalized communities. The stage was set with an audience that included board staffers, reporters angling for the next viral moment, and activists on both sides braced for fireworks. Leavitt came ready to dominate. She'd practiced her talking points on primetime cable, gleefully jousting with liberal hosts immune to outrage. Crockett, though, brought the work ethic of someone who'd fought for every inch of respect, a stack of research, pointed legal questions, and the determination to force the hearing off script if integrity demanded it. Everybody knew something would go off the rails. The only question was who would trigger it and how the fallout would land. Outside the chamber, social media factions were already sharpening their narratives. Conservative Twitter prepped memes lauding Leavitt as fearless, while progressive corners posted reminders of Crockett's past victories over right-wing provocateurs. It felt like a title fight, each camp convinced they had the future of the movement in their corner. In those first moments, as pleasantries faded and the hearing began, it was more than just two women or two parties. It was about what kind of America would take shape as the culture wars intensified. A nation shaped by exclusion and suspicion, or one defined by belonging and challenge. Here, in the crucible of democracy, two worlds would clash not just for a headline, but for the right to decide whose voice would echo the loudest in the battles to come. And nobody, on either side, could predict how high the stakes would rise before the day was done. Jasmine Crockett's reputation for straight talk was no exaggeration, and when her turn arrived, the energy in the chamber instantly changed. Gone was any pretense of routine political theater. Crockett didn't ease into her questioning. She drove right to the heart of the matter, focusing on Karoline Leavitt's repeated claims about election irregularities in so-called urban areas. Her tone made it clear this wasn't a debate for cable news. It was a demand for accountability grounded in law and historical fact. You've made specific accusations about fraud in cities like Detroit and Atlanta, Crockett pressed, folders of meticulous research at her fingertips. Can you present actual evidence? Leavitt, polished and normally unfazed on camera, faltered for the first time. Her media training told her to pivot, to riff on big concepts about election integrity and common sense reforms. She tried to insist it wasn't about race, but Crockett, refusing to accept generalities, doubled down. She quoted Leavitt's own tweets and TV appearances, where urban had been used as a thinly veiled code, and pointedly asked, "What exactly does urban voting pattern mean to you?" The silence that followed wasn't just tension. It was every onlooker realizing this was no ordinary exchange. Leavitt attempted to regain composure, deflecting. "You're making this about identity when it's about security." Crockett, her voice strong and clear, responded, "You don't get to tell me what my community needs or what this is about. I've spent years defending voting rights in courtrooms and classrooms. When you single out cities that are majority black and brown and suggest they're suspect, you're supporting a dangerous legacy. Do you have the evidence or not?" The Republican members bristled, sensing a narrative slipping out of their hands. The committee chair tried unsuccessfully to intervene, but Crockett held her ground. Her questions landed like precise blows, direct, fact-based, and zero tolerance for rhetorical wriggling. Do you have any proof that Detroit is more fraudulent than the suburbs, that Philadelphia's votes are less legitimate than those in rural America? Crockett's gaze never wavered, making clear she wasn't there for sound bites. She was there to hold powerful people accountable. Leavitt fumbled, grasping for her talking points. The crowd, sensing a crack in her confidence, grew still. What once was a forum for political point scoring now felt more like a cross-examination, with history, law, and lived experience all in the witness chair. The stark difference between Crockett's steady demands for substance and Leavitt's growing defensiveness lit every face in the chamber. Then Leavitt stumbled into a trap of her own making, growing visibly tense. She accused Crockett of being deliberately divisive, and as Crockett pressed for a final evidence-based answer, Leavitt's frustration spilled into open hostility. "Maybe you should focus on your own district," she snapped, almost daring Crockett to escalate. With that, the dam was about to break. The exchange had stripped away all politeness. It was no longer two politicians sparring, but the raw edge of America's most painful divides brought to the surface. Staffers stopped whispering. Reporters' fingers hovered over keyboards, knowing something viral was about to be born. The air was thick not just with anger, but with anticipation. Everyone understood that Crockett wasn't about to let the moment pass. She was about to seize it and reshape it with the conviction only someone who'd fought these fights for a lifetime could muster. It was in the quiet seconds before the next words were spoken that the real contest for the soul of the hearing, and maybe even the moment in politics, coiled into its most electric form. What had begun as prepared lines and talking points had transformed into a reckoning neither side could have fully prepared for, and everyone in the room, and soon the country, knew they were about to see what happens when the script breaks, and only truth and nerve are left. The line wasn't just another jab, it was a seismic rupture. When Karoline Leavitt leaned into her microphone and uttered, "Maybe you should go back where you came from," the entire hearing room froze. What had seemed like just another tense exchange about voter fraud and election law instantly turned into a flashpoint replayed in real time across the country. Those 8 words, broadcast live, echoed a legacy of exclusion and bigotry that America has long struggled to overcome. For an instant, even the relentless clicking of reporters' laptops and the background buzz of staffers' whispers went mute. It was as if everyone in Congress, from hardened lawmakers to junior aides, sensed they had just witnessed a moment too raw, too loaded, to ignore. For 3 charged heartbeats, it seemed nobody dared move. Some mouths hung open, others looked down, able to meet the eyes of the 2 women at the center of the storm. Social media directors at news desks scrambled to clip the footage. Phones in the gallery started filming. Hashtags were already spinning into rotation. Even members usually numb to outrage recognized the magnitude. This wasn't a political gaffe, but a live detonation of decades of painful history. Jasmine Crockett, standing tall as the target of that line, didn't flinch. The tension was palpable. Her silence became thunderous as every lens fixed on her. When she finally spoke, her voice was steel wrapped in velvet, carrying not just her own story, but the stories of generations before her. "Did you just tell me to go back where I came from?" she asked, her tone soft but unyielding, forcing every ear in the room and every American watching to confront the true meaning behind Leavitt's words. Crockett didn't just respond, she educated, invoking her Missouri roots, her heritage, her constituents in Texas, and her right as an elected representative to claim her place, not just in Congress, but in the quilt of American democracy. She built a bridge from her grandmother's first ballot cast after decades of exclusion to her own seat at the committee dais. Crockett weaponized the "go back" trope itself, refusing to let it diminish her. Instead, she declared, "We didn't go back. We stayed. We fought. We got elected. And now I demand answers, not for me, but for every American told they don't belong." Each word landed like a clarion bell, inviting reflection, sparking discomfort, but utterly impossible to ignore. Across the aisle, some Republicans shifted uneasily. Democrats nodded, some wiping tears. Even Karoline Leavitt, suddenly aware she had crossed more than just a rhetorical boundary, recoiled as the gallery murmured and phones lit up with texts and alerts. Within seconds, the confrontation became digital wildfire. Viral clips, impassioned opinion columns, and dueling statements from lawmakers and celebrities on both sides. Hashtags trended worldwide. "Go back," This is my house. History in the making. Attempts at damage control sputtered. Light's team tried to reframe her comment as a misunderstood policy critique, but public and media consensus was clear. The line had been crossed. Demands for censure echoed through Congress, while political strategists scrambled to contain the fallout. Analysts called it an inflection point for the new generation of congressional leadership. Sociologists and historians pointed to it as proof that the struggle over who belongs in American politics remains unfinished. But one truth became undeniable. Crockett's answer wasn't just about clapping back in a viral moment. It was about reclaiming the room, the narrative, and ultimately a broader American story. In that electric silence, her refusal to be diminished, to claim space, demand respect, and speak for the silenced, became a lesson written into the record. The line that was supposed to exile her instead marked Crockett as one of the defining voices in the ongoing American conversation about who gets to speak, who must listen, and what leadership really looks like. The room, still humming with the aftershock of Karoline Leavitt's loaded remark, became something else entirely as Jasmine Crockett drew herself up, claiming the silence as her own. Crockett didn't react with anger or rancor. Instead, her reply unfurled with the patient gravity of someone who's not just ready for a fight, but for a teachable moment millions would never forget. Her voice was steady, a lawyer's tone, sure of its authority but alive with the lived truth of its history. She fixed Leavitt with an unwavering gaze and spoke softly, each word measured by years of knowing exactly what was at stake. "Let's get one thing clear," Crockett began, her posture regal, her accent fierce with Texas pride. "I am exactly where I came from. I was born in Missouri, educated in Tennessee. I stand here now representing Texas, one of the greatest and most diverse states in this union. This," she gestured around the chamber, "is my Congress. These are my people. And this is my America." As the words escaped, the hearing room shifted again. The static of embarrassment was replaced by electricity, half the room nodding, the other half frozen, as Crockett carved the moment from the realm of insult to one of personal and national belonging. But Crockett wasn't finished. She invoked ancestors who came here in chains and built this country with their sweat and hope, who fought for every inch of freedom I carry today. Her voice lifted, not in self-defense, but as an act of solidarity. "Go back where you came from" isn't just aimed at me. It's what they told my grandfather when he tried to vote. What they told every Black American who dared believe democracy could be for them. The power of her reply was in its connection. She bound herself to the generations before her and to the millions watching who'd ever felt othered by a careless line. She spoke directly to Leavitt, erasing any pretense that this was just partisan posturing. "You don't get to decide where I belong. The people of Texas, my district, my voters, my neighbors, sent me here to ask these questions, hold this government accountable, and make sure nobody gets silenced by intimidation or by ignorance. I don't need permission from someone with a media contract to stand up for the rights of my constituents." The transformation was almost physical. Crockett's calm, her dignity, and her precision reframed the moment. No shouting, no grandstanding, just a short civics lesson and a living demonstration of what representation actually means. She then returned to the heart of the hearing. Integrity. "You came here today to talk about voter fraud and urban voters. Yet when pressed, you brought nothing but old scripts and divisive language. So, let's talk about facts." Crockett opened a folder, reading election audit numbers that proved the legitimacy of the very cities questioned, listing recounts, bipartisan certifications, and Republican-appointed judges affirming the results. "You didn't mention any of this, did you? Because it doesn't fit the story you want to tell." In those final seconds, Crockett tied it all together, not just for herself, but as a model for every young person watching. "What's inappropriate isn't my question. It's showing up here, attacking our democracy, and then trying to tell one of its defenders to sit down and stay quiet. We stayed. We fought. Now we lead." As she yielded back her time, the room erupted, not in chaos this time, but in applause and a sense that something had truly shifted. News alerts pinged, hashtags like #ThisIsMyHouse and #Crockett Clapback roared to life online, and political strategists started rewriting their playbooks. In a single poised response, Crockett had transformed a tired insult into a new high-water mark for public grace, civic courage, and the enduring fight for belonging at the heart of the American story. The instant Jasmine Crockett finished her masterclass rebuttal, the hearing room burst into a cacophony of reactions that rippled far beyond Capitol Hill. The usual congressional decorum vanished. Democratic committee members broke into spontaneous applause, a rare show of unity and pride, while several Republicans hefted in discomfort, some heads bowed, others stealing furtive glances at the press corps. The committee chair, gavel in hand, tried futilely to restore order, but the atmosphere had shifted too fundamentally. Everyone in the chamber grasped that they had just witnessed something seismic. Reporters scrambled to capture every detail. Phones and cameras caught the electric seconds after Crockett's speech. Staffers rushed outside to brief journalists. Congressional aides traded texts. Did that really just happen? News outlets suspended their usual programming, cutting to live coverage and instant analysis. Political correspondents tweeted in real time, labeling the moment a paradigm shift and the most powerful stand against bigotry on the House floor in a generation. Within minutes, video clips saturated social platforms. Hashtag Crockett Clapback, hashtag This Is My House, and hashtag Go Back trended not just nationwide but globally. Instagram Reels and TikTok were flooded with reaction videos, some celebratory, some somber, all unable to look away. The reverberations were immediate in the wider political sphere. Congressional Black Caucus members held an impromptu press conference, their words ringing with solidarity and warning that what happened in that room is emblematic of the daily battles Black women in politics face. Advocacy groups and civil rights organizations amplified Crockett's response, framing it as a rallying call for voters of color, immigrants, and anyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. Fundraising emails blasted out within hours. If you believe in Crockett's vision for America, help her fight back. Small dollar donations to her campaign shattered records, with new supporters citing her courage and composure. On cable news, panels erupted. CNN played the confrontation in a loop. Fox News, caught off guard, debated how to minimize the damage, while MSNBC used the moment to interrogate the insidiousness of coded language in American politics. Opinion pieces poured in, from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal, many agreeing that Leavitt's words had crossed a line that could not be explained away. Editorial boards called for a formal censure. Late-night hosts reenacted the confrontation, with Crockett's lines quoted as instant classics. Inside Republican circles, the aftershocks were more complicated. Some advisors warned that Leavitt's comment had become the new attack ad for every vulnerable GOP candidate in a swing district. Others confessed privately that the debacle underscored a dangerous disconnect with rising voter demographics. Leavitt's allies circulated statements clarifying her real intent, but the damage was done. In closed-door meetings, senior party strategists dissected how quickly a miscalculation, even from a media-savvy star, could boomerang in the era of viral politics. Meanwhile, invitations flooded Crockett's office from talk shows, universities, and even international media. Professors began scheduling her response for classroom analysis, an exemplar in dignity, constitutional literacy, and the power of history as rhetorical shield. Celebrities and ordinary Americans alike voiced support, tagging Crockett in posts that marveled at her grace under pressure. It became cool for a brief but significant window to repost her words about staying, fighting, and leading. For the political and cultural establishment, the message was unavoidable. What happens within the walls of Congress in the space of a single phrase and a single answer can send tremors out into the heart of American identity. Crockett's stand didn't just shift a hearing or a headline, it reignited questions about who belongs, who decides, and how the past and present keep colliding in the public square. The chamber's energy lingered long after the cameras cut, a reminder that in the new era of politics, one moment of clarity is all it takes to shake the nation awake. Jasmine Crockett's fiery confrontation with Karoline Leavitt did more than just dominate a news cycle. It forged a legacy that continues to reverberate through the corridors of power and the national psyche. In the weeks and months after that explosive hearing, Crockett's relentless focus on evidence, dignity, and history became a rallying touchstone for a new generation of leaders and activists. Political observers marveled at how her calm yet uncompromising response transformed the moment from a potential insult into a turning point, a clear signal that the era of letting microaggressions slide in the halls of power was over. Her standoff with Leath is now a staple in textbooks, media studies curricula, and workshops for aspiring leaders. Universities have dissected her rhetoric, emphasizing the way she fused her ancestry, law, and public service into a narrative bigger than herself. Academic institutions cite it as a masterclass in leadership under fire, making Crockett's words required viewing for debates about racism, democracy, and who belongs at the table of American power. The legacy extended to social and electoral movements. Within days, Crockett's campaign received a record influx of donations, mostly from first-time donors, inspired by her unwillingness to back down. Civil rights and voter education groups echoed her call to stay and fight, translating outrage into voter registration drives, fundraising pushes, and renewed calls for accountability, especially among the young, Black, and immigrant voters with whom Crockett's story resonated most strongly. The media impact was just as dramatic. Crockett's composure became a new benchmark for public figures facing adversity, with commentators comparing her poise to historic moments of conviction on the civil rights trail. Her blend of legal acumen and media savvy turned her into a go-to voice in national conversations on democracy, race, and representation. She parlayed the viral moment into broader leadership, seeking key committee assignments, shaping democratic messaging, and acting as a counterweight to misinformation campaigns by demanding fact-driven debate at every turn. Yet the legacy was not without its challenges. Crockett's rise also drew coordinated pushback from some corners. Online critics accused her of grandstanding, and her opponents tried to weaponize the moment in attack ads and interviews. Despite this, her ability to frame the confrontation as a teachable moment rather than mere spectacle largely blunted those effects. Instead, she doubled down on the strategy that made her famous: preparation, community engagement, and transparency. Looking further ahead, Crockett's confrontation with Light is remembered as the moment the so-called "go back" narrative was decisively uprooted, not just for one person or one district, but as a wake-up call to anyone tempted to wield exclusion as a political weapon. By placing identity, history, and constitutional rights at the center of the debate, Crockett didn't just defend herself. She fortified a new model for political leadership: steadfast, evidence-based, and unafraid to claim space amid storms of prejudice and partisanship. The episode is still discussed in classrooms, on social media, and in newsrooms across the country. Crockett's legacy isn't about a viral moment or a single clapback, but about rewriting the rules of engagement, proving that when history, law, and lived experience stand together, they don't just survive the flashpoint, they set the terms for what comes next. The day Jasmine Crockett stood her ground in Congress did more than spark headlines or inspire a blitz of social media reaction. It cracked open a national conversation that refuses to close. As the viral energy waned and Capitol Hill's routine resumed, it became clear this was more than a soundbite scuffle. This was the spark for a broader reckoning, one with implications far beyond the individual fates of Crockett or Karoline Leavitt. The question wasn't just about who won the exchange, but what it means for the future of American politics, public discourse, and the power struggles playing out in institutions everywhere. The most telling aftermath unfolded quietly. In the weeks that followed, activists, educators, and young leaders cited Crockett's moment as proof that the rules of engagement had shifted. Her refusal to yield, her ability to turn a classic attempt at silencing into a declaration of "I belong," did more than vindicate a personal insult. It demanded that politics, on every level, confront the growing insistence of those once told to wait their turn or lower their voices. More Black and immigrant women stepped forward at town halls, more students ran for campus office, and more community organizers pushed back against discriminatory tactics, often invoking Crockett's words as both shield and spark. But what truly made the moment bigger was how it reframed the boundaries of who gets to speak and who gets to frame the narrative. No longer was it enough for politicians to claim a seat at the table. They had to claim the right to shape the menu, the discussion, and the rules themselves. Crockett's example proved that expertise, preparation, and roots matter more than the approval of entrenched power brokers. Her call to stay and fight became shorthand in political circles, a rallying cry too, had echoed through local campaigns, advocacy groups, and legislative backrooms. Meanwhile, national parties were forced to reckon with the seismic shift Crockett's masterclass revealed. For Democrats, her strength set a standard to remind base voters and the broader public that dignity, substance, and lived truth beat empty bravado or tribal dog whistles. For Republicans, the incident triggered urgent conversations about tone and appeal, with strategists warning that the old scripts could backfire catastrophically among women and voters of color. As subsequent hearings and campaign events unfolded, there was a visible recalibration, more care taken with language, more preparation to address substance, and a new awareness that every word has the potential to spark or deflate a movement. Beyond politics, the Crockett Light confrontation found life as a cultural reference point. It was dissected on podcasts, taught in workshops on diversity and leadership, even referenced in book clubs and sermons. Parents played clips to children as lessons in courage and claiming space. Community leaders adapted her message for local struggles, from school boards to city councils, reminding everyone that stories of exclusion are not relics. They're tools for building a more honest, inclusive future. And yet, with all this progress, the encounter also left America with tough questions. Can a single viral moment sustain real movement for change, or does the weight fall back on those who relive these struggles daily? Will institutions reform to ensure voices like Crockett's aren't exceptional but expected? Is it enough to go viral, or must every moment of courage be leveraged for policy, advocacy, and actual equity? As news cycles shift and the next controversy beckons, the real power of Jasmine Crockett's stand lingers in the challenge it poses. What happens next isn't defined by one exchange, but by who steps up, who builds, and who refuses to let old insults or new obstacles shape the story alone. With her words etched in memory, the next chapter is up for grabs, led by those who know Go Back has lost its power and Belong is just the beginning. What Jasmine Crockett did that day on Capitol Hill was more than a viral retort. It was a seismic recalibration of who gets to speak, who claims the floor, and who defines the boundaries of belonging in American life. In a single moment, confronted with one of the oldest and ugliest taunts in politics, she met exclusion with ironclad resolve. Her words, rooted in history and delivered with unwavering calm, not only dismantled an insult, but set a new expectation for every public leader and engaged citizen across the country. But Crockett's stand isn't just a story for headlines or history books, it's a call for all of us. In an era when quick clips and reaction posts can drown out context, when the power to define who belongs is contested every day, her performance reminds us what real leadership requires: preparation, courage, and the willingness to root your answer in something far bigger than a single moment. Crockett didn't just fight for her own seat at the table. She opened the door for others, proving that dignity, context, and the courage to stay and fight still matter more than even the loudest attempts to silence. So as you watch, reflect on what this exchange truly means beyond the headlines. Who do you want holding power, not just over the mic, but over the questions that shape our future? Are you ready to demand more from your representatives, your institutions, and even your own conversations? Every share, every comment, every new subscriber grows this dialogue, pushing it further into the spaces where it can spark real action and real understanding. Drop your thoughts below. Have you ever been told you don't belong? And how did you answer back? Who else deserves the spotlight for meeting bias with brilliance? If Crockett's example fires you up, hit that like button, subscribe for more breakdowns of the moments that move the needle, and ring the bell so you're first to catch the next game-changing exchange. Because in the end, the story isn't just Crockett's. It's everyone who's ever had to stand up and say, "This is my house too."